for coming on a holiday. Kahit na holiday, we are very grateful to the media for joining us. May nagsabi nga sa media, uy, holiday sir. Pero sa gobyerno yata, we have people na holiday nagtatrabaho pa and from the private sector. Welcome to Pandesal Forum here at 84-year-old Kamuning Bakery Cafe. We have a very important topic today. It's a very unique and very progressive advocacy. Our topic today is urban farming and peri-urban farming in the Philippines. Ang tawag sa Tagalog dito, agrikultura sa kalunsuran para sa masaganang kinabukasan. Agriculture in the urban areas for a more prosperous future. Ang ano natin dito, National Urban and Peri-Urban Agriculture Program advocates. I will properly introduce every speaker here later on. Every one of them will give an opening statement about urban farming and peri-urban agriculture. Then we welcome questions from the media. I'll mention their names muna, pero later on I'll introduce them one by one. Of course, we have here former Secretary of Agriculture, Dr. William Dar here. Yes. And all the way from a very hectic trip in South Korea, pero he is a civic leader who is very supportive of agriculture. Dr. Cecilio Pedro, President, Federation of Filipino Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Inc., FFCCCII, Dr. Cecilio Pedro. Fresh from South Korea, hectic trip niya. Of course, we have from the government, from the Department of Agriculture, he is the Director of the Bureau of Plant Industry, BPI, Dr. Gerald Glenn Panganiban. Representing academe, all the way from University of Arizona, a professor there in Biosystems Engineering. Let us welcome Professor Dr. Joel L. Coelho. Yes. These are our speakers. Later on, each one will give an opening statement, and then please get ready with your questions. Before I call them, I'd like to acknowledge some special guests. We have a special guest from academe, all the way from New York, a balik scientist here in the Philippines, Dr. Gonzalo Al Serafrica. Yes, andun siya sa likod. Also another balik scientist, professor from University of Illinois, Professor Gil Mendoza. Over there, supporting also this advocacy. We have a civic leader, a woman's rights leader from Mindanao, Ms. Samira Gutok. She wants to support the advocacy also for Mindanao region. Now I'd like to call on our panelists to give their opening statement about urban agriculture and peri-urban agriculture. Ano ba to? Anong kinabukasan nito, and what are their plans and proposals? Of course, Dr. William Dar is very outstanding former Agriculture Secretary, Senior Advisor and Advocate of the Negosyo, Kapatid, Angat, Lahat Agriculture Program. Let us welcome Dr. William Dar for his opening statement.
Sige po. Many thanks, Wilson, for the kind introduction. Well, presently, I am representing here today Negosyo, Kapatid, Angat, Lahat Agri Program. This is a platform where the industry, the big brother, so to speak, in agriculture is in partnering with Negosyo as the conduit with government. So, kagaya po sa BPI, Department of Agriculture, may mga big brothers that are really working together to really support the farming sector, particularly in this case, the vegetable industry, the fruits industry, and many other commodity industries. Now, in relation to the topic today, on two occasions, I was Secretary of Agriculture. First, during the time of ERAP, 1998, we started putting up an urban agriculture program here in Quezon City. So that continues to be going on up until today. The second occasion was when I was Secretary of Agriculture during the time of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. I can still vividly remember during the Bureau Plant Industry Anniversary, January 17 of 2020, where I declared and advocated that an urban agriculture program be started. And this is way before the COVID-19 pandemic, officially starting March 16, 2020. So that's how I really give importance to urban agriculture, to peri-urban agriculture, because, you know, the country, if you look at how we are faring in terms of vegetable production, fruit production, there are times of the year that we don't have much because of the typhoons that visit us. An average of 20 typhoons, about 5 of them very, very destructive. So Benguet, being the vegetable capital of the country, once having a strong typhoon, the vegetables are wiped out. In the same manner, for other provinces, Ilocos region, Cagayan Valley, and other regions, southern Tagalog, when a big typhoon is affecting the country, particularly these regions, then you will have again the problem of supply of fruits and vegetables. And that's how prices are going up after the event, the climatic event. So that's one key rationale why we have put in place institutionalizing again urban agriculture. And when I was Secretary of Agriculture during the time of President Duterte, because of these repeated experiences, minabuti po natin na peri-urban agriculture is as important because of logistics. You know, you have problems of transporting these vegetables and fruits from faraway provinces. So it would be the best of arrangements if we develop vegetable and fruit growing areas around. That's why they call peripheral urban, peri-urban agriculture is such a critical agriculture, type of agriculture, because you are nearest where the demand is needed. So, from all these revelations, you can see that I am really strongly supporting urban and peri-urban agriculture, and good, Glenn and the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Plant Industry are still continuing this program. But the only problem today, meanwhile, is the very limited budget given the program. You know, rice-centric agriculture pa rin tayo ngayon. About 60-65% of the budget in agriculture is devoted to rice. While I agree that must be the level, but when there are opportunities for significantly increasing the budget of agriculture, you have to really invest largely and significantly to high-value agriculture, and that should be a big direction the government must undertake. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Dr. William Dar. Next, for his opening statement, the leader behind the program of National Urban and Peri-urban Agriculture Program. He is the director. He is also director of Bureau of Plant Industry, also High Value Crops Development Program Director. Dr. Gerald Glenn F. Panganiban is an expert agriculturist, agribusiness professional who has pioneered multiple projects in the industry. He is director of NUPAP, also behind the Livelihood Education Rehab Center, Bureau of Corrections, and many others. He will share with us what is the National Urban and Peri-urban Agriculture Program of the Department of Agriculture and how the private sector and all sectors could support. Let us welcome Dr. Gerald Glenn F. Panganiban.
Thank you, sir, for that very generous introduction, and magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Glenn po from the BPI. Well, the Urban Agriculture Program, sabi na nga po ni Wilson and ni former Secretary Dar, ito po ay ginagawa na natin historically, from the 70s pa nga yata, sir. 70s and then 90s and then back again nung COVID. But just like to compliment yung binanggit na kanina, na it's, I think it's a way of sustainable living because we know, yun nga, yung mga volatilities natin sa market, at least if we produce in the cities, in our own communities, in our own backyards, mabawasan na yung ating food basket from yung mga pwede nating i-produce na gulay. Second, after having that information and having that encouragement of participation from the individuals, is looking at the markets na. We are partners with the private sector, with the non-government organizations, and with other government agencies para ma-sustain yung programa. Nabanggit natin, merong from the 70s, 90s, and then from the past COVID experience. But what we want to have is really a sustainable program moving forward. Nabanggit kanina na yun nga, yung budget ay limited pa. Actually, na-budgetan lang yung program, itong administration ni President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. And we're very thankful for him for having this support for the project. At ito ay nilaunch namin together with other agencies ng government. Yung DILG partner natin, yung DOJ partner na natin dito. So because we want to really upscale, and if not upscale, is to engage the private sector and the technology providers so that we can realize kung ano ba talaga itong technologies na pwedeng makabenefit sa ating mas malaking citizenry, of course. We want to have a food production system in every barangay, sana, ang ating objective, But we know na hindi yun kaagad-kaagad magagawa, so we want to have demo farms. We want to have businesses share their best practices, and really meron bang dito, meron bang future dito, yung entrepreneurship side. Sabi nga ni sir, it's what the demand of the markets that can sustain, So if we have urban farms na naandyan for the individual households, if we have urban farms there or community farms for the communities and the barangays, and if we have that upscale production systems, yung ang tawag doon, sir, alternative food production systems through controlled environment farming man yan, or rooftop farming, or vertical farming, that we can produce to complement. I'm saying complement, hindi to replace, kasi yun din ang criticism, baka daw ma-replace yung production system o yung demand for the rural production. Yun yung goal ng programa. And I think for the past 2-3 years, marami na tayong naging partners, so the critical mass is there already. Pangalawa, yung technologies, dahil nga marami nang gumagamit, siguro bumababa na ang cost. Siguro yung pangatlo na lang siguro is yun nga, yung ating partnerships to really lower yung inputs. Kasi ngayon, ang problema is yung mataas na energy cost and all that, the input cost. But with yung critical mass at yung ating mga participants, mga technology developers na gumagawa nito, mga businesses na engaged, I think it can encourage other people, other businesses, and maybe possibly investors here and abroad to invest on urban farms and controlled environment farming. So I think this is in relation and this is towards the direction din ng ating bagong secretary, Francisco Chu Laurel Jr., na siya ay tingnan natin ano ba yung information na meron tayo, ano ba yung demand natin, nasaan ba yan, saan ba strategic ilagay yung ating mga investments. So I think with this alternative food production system can complement yung ating mga existing na production systems in the rural areas. So yun lamang po at we hope na patuloy nyo kaming suportahan sa pag-encourage nito at pag-disseminate ng information about urban and peri-urban agriculture program. Thank you.
Very much, Dr. Gerald Glenn Panganiban, for giving us an overview of government plans. By the way, our next speaker is Dr. Cecilio K. Pedro. He is President of the Federation of Filipino Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Inc., FFCCCII, who has an ongoing partnership also with the BPI of Dr. Panganiban. FFCCCII under Dr. Pedro hopes to encourage pioneering of tea farming in Benguet area. Dr. Cecilio Pedro is also founder, more well known as founder and CEO of La Moyan Corporation, which produces, manufactures Happy toothpaste and mouthwash and other products, including Camtech. He is also a philanthropist who is helping deaf mutes and also education advocacy. Unknown to many people, Dr. Pedro, the industrialist, also supports Philippine agriculture, and he told us this morning at breakfast he is personally a farmer in Trece Martires, Cavite, and in Palawan. Let us welcome for his opening statement, Dr. Cecilio K. Pedro, FFCCCII President.
Thank you very much, Wilson, for the kind introduction. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Ako po'y nagagalag, sumama rito sa pag-usapan ng agriculture. Sabi ni Wilson, farmer daw ako, but first and foremost, I'm a trader, a negosyante. I like go Negosyo with Secretary Dar, and I like plants with our Director of Plant Industry, Director Glenn. Of course, I like academics because it's the key. You learn first from academics, kay Joel, Dr. Joel. So whatever you learn, you implement. Kami mga negosyante, very practical, very practical. We look first for what is profitable at the end of the day. Kailangan kumita ka, no? Yung mga farmers natin, nagtatanim, pag walang kita, kawawa sila, namamatay. Tinatapon yung mga produkto nila. Pumunta kayo sa Benguet. Pag low season, tinatapon nila yung mga vegetable dahil mas mahal. Idala nila sa Maynila dahil our logistical cost is so expensive. Okay? Pero ibang usapan yon. But my opening statement here is I'm happy to be with all of these gentlemen, together with all of you, with media, because kayo ang pag-asa ng bayan, media. Kayo ang magsasabi kung ano ang dapat namin gawin at ano ang dapat maging daanan ng mga private, public, 5P daw eh. Private, public, academics, si Director Serafica. Marami pang sinabi dyan eh. Hindi ko nakuha lahat eh. But anyway, it's a very tough job. Kailangan tumulong lahat. Okay? Unahin natin yung direksyon. Ano ang direksyon na gagawin natin? Food security. Yung kinakain natin dapat should be local, hindi imported. Pumunta ka sa Divisoria, halos lahat imported. Pati carrots, pati sibuyas, bawang. Bakit? They can produce at a lower price in China, in Vietnam, in Thailand than us. So we end up buying their products. Pag binabawal ng gobyerno, smuggling naman ang kalaban. Ang daming problema ng bayan. Pero bilib ako sa Pilipino, magaling ang Pinoy. Kaya lang, we have to put our acts together. Kailangan sama-sama. Together with the government, together with the academics, and the private sector, kami mga negosyante, mga people involved in business, we are willing to invest. Okay? We are willing to invest. As long as we can see that it's going to be profitable in the future. Kailangan kumita, no? Pag nalugi ang negosyante, nobody will go into it. At the end of the day, it's about making a little profit so we can sustain the operation. Ito bang pag-usapan natin? Hanggang bukas na yan, walang katapusan yan. But first and foremost, I'm very happy to be here with this distinguished gentleman seated beside me. Sila ang tunay na doktor. Ako, binigyan lang ako ng honoris causa. No? Hindi ako tunay na doktor. Kwok, doktor ako, kwok. But anyway, I've been exposed to all of this over the last 50 years in business. I've been in business for the last 50 years. Matanda na po tayo. So, I'm happy to report that there is future in the Philippines. Ang Pilipino, magaling. Ang problema lang natin, sama-sama. Ayusin natin ang bayan natin. Umunlad tayo dahil ang Pilipino dapat ay umunlad dahil magaling ang Pinoy. Huwag kayong maniwala na bobo ang Pinoy. Hindi po totoo yun. Magaling ang Pinoy. But we have to put our acts together. We have to help one another. Each sector will have to contribute something towards a main objective, which is food security. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.
Last but not the least, we have from the academe invited by Director Panganiban all the way from University of Arizona, Dr. Joel L. Coelho is a professor in Biosystems Engineering, also Vice Chairman of the International Association for Vertical Farming. He will explain to us what we can do here in the Philippines. He is also Director of the Graduate Studies for Interdisciplinary Applied Biosciences, Bioeconomy and New Food Systems at the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona. Yung International Association for Vertical Farming, of which he is Vice Chairman, is based in Munich, Germany. Our guest, Dr. Coelho, is a globally recognized expert in engineering sustainable biological and agricultural systems. He has more than 33 years experience in research, teaching, and outreach in innovating controlled environment agriculture, CEA, for sustainable production of food and high-value bioproducts. He has a very long biodata. I'm not mentioning everything, but he has published over 80 referred journal publications, 12 book chapters, and he has delivered over 600 professional presentations around the world about this topic that we need in the Philippines today. I'm summarizing his very long biodata. Thank you for coming, Professor Joel Coelho, for your opening statement. Welcome.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Thank you so much, Wilson, and thank you to Wilson Flores for organizing this forum, of course, Pandesal Forum, and thank you to the Kamuning Baker and Cafe for welcoming us. And of course, thank you to all the members of the press for taking the time during this holiday to be here this morning. So I thought I'd just give an introduction in terms of a brief background about vertical farming, urban farming. So urban farming and peri-urban farming has two kinds. One is open air, which is the regular farming. The other one is indoor farming, which is also known as controlled environment agriculture. There are two types of controlled environment agriculture. One is greenhouse, which is regular greenhouse. The other one is known as vertical farming, which is the more modern incarnation or version of a greenhouse. So in a vertical farm, you have typically a warehouse type of building, and inside you have shelves that are stacked vertically upwards. And that's where you're growing the plants. And typically the plants are grown not using soil, but using liquid nutrient solutions. It's a process known as hydroponics. So you're able to save tremendously on land because you are going upwards. And you also save on nutrients because the nutrients are dissolved in the water, and you recirculate the water until all the nutrients in the water are assimilated or consumed by the plants. So it's a sustainable and efficient method. At the same time, you have the freedom to control the environment inside in terms of temperature, relative humidity, and light. And therefore, you can produce crops at the highest productivity and efficiency. And you can do this 24/7, 365 days a year. Theoretically independent of geography, independent of climate, independent of weather, independent of season. So that's the real power behind vertical farming. So a little bit of history. The space program, NASA, was the first one to really develop the idea of vertical farming because in the future they plan on sending manned mission, say on the moon and Mars. And for the mission to be feasible, they have to stay there for some time, like in Mars, at least 2 years. So to make that happen, it's not possible for the astronauts to bring all the water, all the food, all the oxygen that they will need. So the solution there is for the astronauts on Mars to be able to produce crops in situ or on location. And the only way that they could do that is by having a controlled environment system because as you know, there's no oxygen on Mars. The temperature is swinging wildly. There's deadly radiation impacting the surface of Mars. So the only way to do this is in a controlled environment system. So I had the privilege of doing my postdoctoral fellowship at NASA Kennedy Space Center. And I did research precisely in this area. It's called the Controlled Ecological Life Support Systems Division, or space farming, if you will. And Japan was the very first country that took advantage of this technology to commercialize it for Earth applications. So Japan started vertical farms. They called them plant factories in the beginning, but they started in the 1980s. And over the 90s, the 2000s, and even today, they have a lot of vertical farms in operation in Japan. And it makes sense in Japan because Japan, as you know, is very limited in terms of their arable land. So today, globally, vertical farming has emerged, and it's now commercialized in North America, in the United States and Canada, parts of Europe, in Australia, in the Middle East, in Singapore, and even here in the Philippines, actually, there's a few vertical farming companies now in operation, including in Makati. So then here's another context. The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization made a projection that for us to be able to meet the global demand for food by 2050, we have to increase our food production by 70%. And in terms of crop production, we have to double it. So that means we have to increase it by 100%. But food production is already consuming 70% of all freshwater withdrawals worldwide. And it's already utilizing about half of all habitable land. And in fact, it's utilizing about 30% of all energy expenditures. So if we're going to double our crop production in a matter of years by 2050, the biggest question is, well, where do we get our extra fresh water? Where do we get our land? There's not available enough resources for this. So this is why we need to innovate, and one such innovation is vertical farming. So that is the rationale for vertical farming. And then on top of that, I'd like to add, the global demand for fresh vegetables market revenue this year, 2023, is valued at about 750 billion, that's a B, US dollars, 750 billion US dollars. The share of the Philippines, the revenue of the Philippines for fresh vegetables market is only about 7.5 billion US dollars. I mean, compare that with a total of 750 billion US dollars. It's minuscule, it's a small amount. And the Philippines is a tropical country, and it is well poised to increase its vegetable production. But of course, we are living in the era of climate change. And people around the Philippines, they're complaining about the changing weather patterns. And in fact, some farmers in Bukidnon, they were growing traditionally, green peppers and all these high-value crops outdoors, and now they're no longer able to do that because of the precipitation increase and heat. And so they have to be able to do what they used to do for many, many years, now inside a rudimentary form of greenhouse. That is controlled environment. And so for urban agriculture really to prosper, we need to incorporate some forms of vertical farming as well, or indoor farming, so that it will be climate resilient. I think I'd like to end with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nasimulan itong urban farming o urban agriculture, kung hindi ako nagkakami, nabanggit kung ang pagkakalam ko doon sa pandemya. At napakaganda ito. Nakita ko itong urban na nabanggit din ni Sir na kailangan sustainable 2050, meron tayong pagkain. Ang problema, nakikita ko, mahalaga rin yung negosyo eh. Ang utak ng mga Pilipino, kikita ba ako niyan? Kikita ba ako niyan? Meron ba ako niyan? Yan ang ano ng mga Pilipino eh. So urban, itong atin, anong dahilan, Sir? Bakit pandemya pa, parang ilan lang yung tagumpay dito, yung Quezon City, yung sa Barangay Holy Spirit, meron silang ilan yung lugar. Saan nagkaroon ng problema doon? Yung mentalidad ba ng mga Pilipino? O gobyerno ba? O yung holistic approach? Lahat ng ahensya ng gobyerno, katulad ng binabanggit, magkaisa tayo. Kasi sinimula ng matagal na, pero wala eh. Parang ningas kugon. Umpisa, mainit, ang sarap. Pero hanggang tumatagal, nawala na, patay na. So saan dapat natin, kailangan natin ma-educate din eh. Kailangan natin ma-educate ng Pilipino na ito, sustainable, hanggang 2050, dapat kikita tayo. At the same time, hindi tayo magugutom. Ano ang nakikita niyong problema, Sir? Si Director Gerald, Sir.
Okay, thank you. Salamat sa napakainit mo rin tanong.
Yes, sir.
Alam naman natin yan. Ikaw na rin na nagsabi. Ayoko magsabi ng gano'n. Hindi ako naniniwalang ningas kugon lang ang Pilipino. Ako, naniniwala akong Pilipino is very enterprising. Nababanggit kanina ni Sir. Kailangan may kita. And I think because of that pandemic, nagkaroon tayo kasi ng time noon eh. Kaya mainit talaga. Every day, ang dami nang hihingin seeds every day. But again, nag-open na yung market natin eh. So ang mga nagtagumpay is yung mga naka-organize. Ang Pilipino, magaling yan talaga individually, lalo na pag inorganize. So yung mga organized groups, sila yung nagtagumpay. It's either led by the LGUs, it's either led by private sector, or yung mga social enterprises natin. Meron din tayo doon sa may Taguig led by social enterprise. So ang ibig ko sabihin, kung meron silang nakikitang gain from their activity, doon magtutuloy-tuloy yan. That's why ang aming mga pinapartner is yung organized groups mostly. Of course, tuloy pa rin yung ating serbisyo para sa mga individual families na naghanap. Ayan, may namimigay pa rin kami ng mga seeds. But it's really directing them to where the gain is, where the market is. Kaya nakipag-partner kami doon sa mga malalaking malls dito sa atin. Isa yan, naging partner natin. Pangalawa, yung mga itong urban and peri-urban, ibig ko nga sabihin, yung mga nasa mga kalapit probinsya ng mga cities, ay sinecertify natin as mga GAP certified or good agricultural practice kasi sila yung nagko-comply sa mga requirements ng mga malalaking institutions like, pwede ba like yung Jollibee, meron na silang mga kinikater from our certified farms, yung good agricultural practices. And then pangatlo nga, we are trying to connect doon sa mga malalaking investors. Yung stories ng urban farming, like yung tinulungan namin, sir, yung PWDs dito sa may Malaria Center, isang magandang practice yon. Pangalawa, yung partnership namin with DOJ, with the Bureau of Corrections. Malaki ang nakikita naming production volume doon. So, ibig sabihin, kung hindi man siya sa negosyo, it could be a help to our government kung makabawas sa gastos ng ating pamahalaan, sa halip na mamigay, di sila na yung nagpo-produce. So, it's all about yun nga, yung sustainability will come maybe from the profit or the gain. I think yung expertise na naandyan, kasi ang susunod na natin, sir, is yung mga young individuals natin, Kaya kami, with the schools, with the universities, amin din itong tinatap para naman sila ay mag-adapt din ng ating mga technology.
Sir, last tanong para sa akin. Ano ang vision nyo simula ngayon to 2050 na itong urban farming hindi na kayo kailangan mag-angkat pa? Meron nating sariwa. Kasi kaya ko nabanggit to, meron akong nabili, hindi ko nabanggitin yung palengke. Yung kamatis, sinasabi nga na Sir Mura nga, but then isang buwan na, nilagay namin doon sa mobile namin, isang buwan na hindi nabubulok. Isang buwan na. Ibig sabihin, may nilalagay doon kung ano yon. So, ang kailangan natin yung sariwa. At sariwa, at the same time, mura. Sa tingin nyo, sir, ano ang dapat na gawin ng ahensya, ng pamahalaan, at sa mga stakeholder, mga negosyante, para sama-sama tayo tulong paano natin maikumbinsi itong ating mga kababayan na ang target nila, at the same time, bukod sa kumita na sila, yung mga maliliit, ang target natin, hindi na tayo magugutom. Tinagurian tayo ng agriculture country, pero nag-aangkat tayo, parang nakakahiya yata sa bansa natin. So, paano natin matitiyak, ipagmamalaki sa buong mundo, na talagang pangangatawan na tayo ay talagang agricultural country at hindi natin nagugutom. Salamat, sir.
Let me compliment what has been given by Glenn. Sustaining this program calls for a whole of society approach. Hindi lang gobyerno, hindi lang pribadong sektor, but lahat po. It's the culture, it's the attitude of every Filipino. Kasi alam natin, every Filipino consumes about 60 or so kilos of vegetables a year, while other countries nasa 120 na. So nasa median po tayo. So ang ibig sabihin, it's still a long way yet to go. And it has to be a sustained campaign and capacity building for us to really grow enough vegetables and fruits for society. Na, of course, you consider all the problems or the objectives of, say, profit. May kita ba yan? Ang mga negosyante, mga entrepreneurs ay gusto nila kikita naman pag nasa mas lalo agrikultura. Kasi let me also characterize what is Philippine agriculture today in relation to what we are discussing. Alam niyo, may problema pa rin tayo in general when it comes to inviting more private sector like the likes of Dr. Pedro. Mabuti, mayroon siyang farm at sumusubok na rin, pero hindi pa rin natutuwa kasi kulang pa kita niya. So, ang cost of production natin mataas. Kasi hindi natin wala sa ating control yung agricultural inputs, fertilizers, pesticides. Saan po galing yan lahat? Abroad. So, we need now, with climate change, nasabi na kanina, with the impacts of climate change, kasi sa climate change, in the future, because of that requirement to go to 70% more food to be produced, ay yung water resources mo naman ay lacking, physically lacking in the future. So the more now that new innovations must be started, and innovations like vertical farming as part of urban agriculture, will be key to producing more in the future. But again, it all boils down to economics. Kikita ba yung entrepreneur kung pupunta doon? Now, in Go Negosyo, we are part of the giving of solutions. Kami may mentoring program para sa mga gustong magnegosyo sa agrikultura. At kasama na yan sa urban agriculture. We have now, itong last 4 years, with the Kapatid Agri-Mentor Me program sa Go Negosyo, we have already trained almost 1,000 potential agripreneurs. At karamihan nito ay yung mga younger generation. Kasi we need to invest, empower the youth, bring them to agriculture, bring them to love agriculture, bring them to be part of the solution. So lahat yan, it's a combination of all of these approaches. Hindi lang minsanan ito. It's a continuing capacity program and mind setting, bringing a new culture towards producing our own food requirements.
Question. This question is more on the first one, actually. So all of us here are on the same page about one important thing, and that is agriculture is a business enterprise. And that includes, of course, urban farming, peri-urban agriculture, vertical farming, every type of indoor farming. And agriculture in general is business enterprise. And the first thing about business is that it has to be profitable. Because if it's not profitable, then that business will not exist for long. So number one, it has to be profitable. The thing about the Philippines is that a lot of farmers in the Philippines have for a long time been smallholders farmers. So in other words, they're acting individually on their own. And they have very limited land, and they have very limited resources or access to resources. And of course, they don't have much bargaining power. And so they are almost at the complete mercy of the middleman, right? So they're putting in their labor, they're putting in their blood, sweat, and tears. But in terms of the returns and the profit, it's not much. Because again, they don't have bargaining power. So one important thing, and we all agree on this, and I've been coordinating now with Director Glenn for a number of years now. I don't know how it began, but we've been coordinating, is that we fully agree that Filipino farmers need to be organized into associations or cooperatives. And this is one thing that I learned directly from the province of Leyte. The former governor, Governor Mick Petilia, after Yolanda hit Leyte, the first thing that he did was organize the farmers in Leyte into cooperatives or farmers associations. And then he brought in the Department of Agriculture, Department of Science and Technology to help them and to impart with them the technologies for growing high-value crops. And then once they have the technology on how to produce, he then next connected the growers to the market, so they can sell their produce to Jollibee, Mang Inasal, and all of these other businesses. So that's what I refer to as strategic agriculture. In other words, the grower, the farmer, is connected to everything that he or she needs to be able to operate, and then ultimately connected to the market so that he or she can sell the produce and make profit. Because a lot of growers and farmers in the Philippines don't have that in existence. They just produce, and then they're at the mercy of whoever buys the produce. But if the Filipino farmers could be organized, educated, informed as a business enterprise, they have the bargaining power, first of all, to be able to sell their produce to the best buyer. So that's one. That's a very important dimension of how to empower Filipino farmers to be able to become profitable. And I think that's key to food security as well for the country. So I thank Director Panganiban here for really promoting that and establishing programs to accomplish that.
Dr. Pedro.
I don't know where to begin. Alam niyo po, yung kita ang pinag-usapan dito, di ba? Yung mga farmers natin, no chance. No chance to get out of the hole, so to speak. Kasi ang liit, wala silang economics of scale. Ilan hectares lang yan, ano? Kung may inabutan sila ng seasonal drop, patay sila. Kikita lang sila kung mataas ang presyo. Pag hindi mataas, patay. So, yan ang number one problem. Kung ako ang hindi pwedeng magsabi kung ako ang secretary. It has to be a direction coming from the government. I was so excited when President Marcos of BBM decided to be the Secretary of Agriculture kasi he has the power to decide. Kailangan sabihin natin, itong agriculture, top priority. Pag may hindrance, tatanggalin ko yan. Pag may mga smuggling, tatanggalin ko yan. Pag may mga hazard, tatanggalin ko yan. It must be top priority of the government. And no hindrances will be put up to stop production. Okay? And then bibigyan ko ng land. Yung land reform, dapat yung land reform ay government land, hindi private land. Eh kumikita na yun, nag-produce na yung private land tapos kukunin mo, hindi tama yun. Ang dami natin private public lands na pwedeng i-reform. Yeah, yun ang dapat natin itulak. O yung Bucor, sinasabi natin. Yung Iwahig. And there are so many other lands, okay? In Vietnam, you don't own the land. It's owned by the government. In China, you don't own a land. The government will give you 1,000 hectares. You just come in and invest. Land is free. Eh dito, babayaran pa natin eh. You imagine you want to own 100 hectares, kung magkano babayaran mo, ubos na eh. No farmers can afford that. So how can you compete with the likes of China, Vietnam, Indonesia? Impossible, okay? So all of these problems will have to be addressed. Land is very crucial. And then you talk about the technology. May seeds. Ang mga seeds ngayon, pinag-aralan, ano? May fertilizer. Anong klaseng fertilizer bagay dito sa anong klaseng production, di ba? May kanya-kanyang fertilizer eh. Pinag-aralan yan eh. Eh, dito they're going into space to make vegetable in space. Tayo dito sa Pilipinas, we cannot even do our vegetable production properly or high-tech. It's about AI. Galing ako sa Korea, it's all vertical farming. Eh, nakaka-frustrate eh. Pero, pag-isipan natin, anong direksyon ang gusto natin? Anong priority natin? Based on this priority, these are the things you cannot do to stop production. The government will stop it. If you do this, I will put you in prison. Isasama kita sa Bucor. Okay? Kailangan production should never be hindered by anyone. And we should help the farmers. Kung hindi, walang mangyayari sa farmers natin. Fertilizer, seeds, mechanization. Sa outside of the country, they are all highly mechanized. Thousands of hectares, all mechanized. Tayo mano-mano. Paano, how can we compete? Carabao, ni Carabao, wala. Mano-mano pa, sa bundok, sa rice terraces, puro mano-mano. Pero we have so much land. I have to stop talking. Maraming problema. Pero direction, galing from the government, galing from the private sector, kailangan kumita, kailangan may market. Thank you.
Pinaka-problema ng sektor ng agrikultura kasi you just not handle urban and peri-urban agriculture without considering the rest of the other parts of the sector. It is a complementary component of the whole food security program of government. Having said that, mabuti nabanggit na nila na ang land holdings ng bawat farmer dito sa ating bansa ay maliliit. An average of 1 hectare, even lower than that. So with that, how can you have profitable farming with all the problems of agricultural inputs? How can you lower the cost of producing a kilo of that produce? These are all the very material questions to ask. Wala tayong economies of scale. And that's why kailangan natin, nung nandyan ako sa agrikultura, ay pinapatupad po natin na starting yung farm clustering and consolidation. So that this will answer now, starting to answer the question of small land holdings via working together in a production operations, say a cluster or group of farmers, say in rice starting with 100 hectares or higher. Ganun po sa iba't ibang commodity. Even in vegetable production, mayroon tayong target na clustering of say 25 hectares. Again, for the benefit also that government services will be coursed through these groups or associations or cooperatives. So yun, from farm clustering, dapat ma-organize sila into becoming cooperatives. That's the way forward, although we have had issues and problems of agricultural cooperatives in the past, it does not mean that we should set that aside already as a mechanism to really, again, re-engineer Philippine agriculture. So, clustering, cooperatives development, then you have the capacity, these cooperatives will now have the capacity to partner with private sector, go into good agribusiness, good agricultural enterprises. Kasi gusto rin tumulong ang pribadong sektor at yun po ang isang advocacy ng Go Negosyo. Itong big brothers natin ay nakipartner sa gobyerno para tulungan yung mga magsasaka natin, mas lalo na yung clustered farms or clustered farmers or cooperatives, and in doing that, kasama na sila sa market value chain ng pribadong sektor. Because market is one key determinant to being very profitable. So yun, may solusyon. Dapat i-elevate pa ng gobyerno itong mga strategies na ito para sa ganon ay itong competitive and sustainable Philippine agriculture will happen.
Thank you, Dr. Dar, and thank you, Dr. Cecilio, Pedro, and other speakers for your answers. Thank you, Dr. Coelho.
Napansin ko there is a rumbling within the private sector. I see the passionate take of Dr. Pedro. And alam ko, nabanggit kanina yung sa smuggling. Ang narinig ko, doon sa SBMA ngayon, tumaas ang cost of doing business there. What can you say about this smuggling? Ba't hindi ma-stop yung smuggling, sir?
Ang smuggling is a function of also profit. Di ba? Nag-i-smuggle sila dahil kumikita sila. Bakit kumikita sila? Yung cost ng production in China, in Vietnam, in other parts of the world is much, much lower than the cost here. So, mag-import sila, smuggling, hindi nire-report kasi we are protecting our farmers, di ba? May tax yan Mataas ang tax natin So, may incentive para sila magpalusot and then they will make so much profit dahil yung volume napakalaki. Alam mo yung bawang in China is only 10 pesos per kilo. Ang binebenta rito, 200, 180 to 200. You imagine the kind of profit they make when they bring in sibuyas. So, these are things we have to consider. Why can't we produce at 20 pesos? Kung 20 pesos na ang cost natin, siguro hindi na sila mag-smuggle, Dahil mataas na rin yung because the cost is low. So that is a challenge.
Yeah, but hindi ma-stop yung smuggling sa SBMA, boss?
Sorry kasi ang request ng mga speakers, naka-urban farming daw tayo. Sorry kasi limited time.
Related to urban farming.
Sorry.
Why is it that urban farming is not taking off? Is it due to smuggling?
Sorry.
To be fair, urban farming, and again in relation to vertical farming, is relatively new globally. And so its adoption in many countries, including here in the Philippines, is just starting. So that's a really fair assessment of that. But I just want to add one thing, please, and this is very much related to urban farming as well. I think that in the Philippines, there's a need to reimagine the farmer because there's a stereotypical concept of the farmer as one who is poor, uneducated, doesn't know anything about science, and again, smallholders farm. That needs to change. And this is relevant in terms of how the government sets policies and how it treats the local farmers. We need to reimagine the Filipino farmer as an entrepreneur. So they are part of the business sector. It's just that they're not properly empowered yet. But they're part of the private sector. So they're entrepreneurs, and so they need to be empowered as such. And they will play a key role in the food security of the country. Thanks.
Actually, sir, you can check it. Siguro sa administration na to, isa sa pinakamalaki ang nasakote, anti-smuggling drives natin. You can check it. Even dun sa Subic, marami tayong nahuli. Marami tayo, sir, nahuli doon. And I think yung mga nahuli natin doon has yung food safety concerns. Yan ang nabanggit nga ni sir. Mababa nga po yung production. Pero sir, kung hindi natin na-check yun, wala siyang import clearances. Yun ang medyo delikado. As for the uptake ng yung pag-take off ng urban farming, I think, sir, it has been on an increase. We have thousands, especially dito sa lungsod ng Quezon City. Just this start of last week, sir, may mga 80,000 participants na sila, urban farmers. Mga 4,000 farms, I think, and that's only for Quezon City. Kung i-compute mo yan, sir, sa buong Pilipinas where the program is being implemented, sir, malaking bagay na rin, sir. I'm not saying, again, it will replace the food production from the rural areas, but yung mga urban farms natin, like yung mga nandito sa Quezon City, yung mga nandyan sa Taguig, it can be a gateway for where, okay, may production tayo ng ganito, we can also source it from the rural areas where we can solve, sir, yung middleman problem siguro natin. But again, yung urban agriculture, sir, can be a complement again kasi pabababain niya yung logistics cost. Yung concern kanina ni sir about yung freshness ng gulay, kung bugbog na yung gulay from kung saang lugar yan, biyahin mo in hours, mahina yung post-harvest, packaging mo and cold storages, talagang hindi na fresh. But with the urban farms, you can pick it from the farms here within the day, can deliver to the market. So yun po, sir, ang ating benepisyo naman ng ating urban farming.
Mag-a-add si Dr. William Dar to the question of Mr. Gagni.
To the question of Mr. Gagni, it takes many sustained efforts, many programs or projects to see to it that this is taking off again, in a big way. And I'd like to mention 2 to 3 projects of Go Negosyo along this area. Number 1, last Saturday, we piloted a youthpreneurship program of Go Negosyo at SM Fairview. We had about 350 students na mentor. Again, with the intent of sustaining an entrepreneurial mindset. And most of them are from Metro Manila. So yun, bringing the youth to love agriculture this early will enhance the implementation of programs like urban and peri-urban agriculture. Number 2, we have a signing ceremony today by 7 o'clock tonight. A memorandum of agreement will be signed between Go Negosyo, Joey Concepcion, and DepEd Secretary Sara Duterte at Marco Polo. Again, to institutionalize agri-business subjects in the curriculum of special high schools in DepEd. At the same time, another project is the enhancement of school gardening in the school areas. Ang dami pong maluluwang na mga school areas na pwedeng gawin na gardens, school gardens, again, under the framework of a business proposition. So ganun po, tuloy-tuloy dapat lahat ng sektor, lahat ng society, one way or the other, will have to contribute sustaining the importance of urban and peri-urban agriculture.